See, my family wasn't always that fond of the idea. And oftentimes I'd hear things like, Alena, if you become a doctor, you will have no work-life balance. Who will raise our 10 grandchildren? Just think about this. I'm like, wait, 10? There were other things that I would hear. But I have to backtrack. You see, everyone in my family is a lawyer. My dad is a lawyer, my mom is a lawyer. All of my grandparents are somehow entangled in the judicial system. Except for my granny, Natasha. God bless the only engineer in my family. But she didn't willingly marry a lawyer, so in my book, she's on their side. So imagine me, the firstborn, the oldest kid, saying that I want to be a doctor ever since I was a child. It took my family a while to accept that the law major gene must have skipped a generation here. But it didn't stop them from trying to deter me from going into medicine. Here's how one of those stories went. Right after high school, I took a gap semester. And while I was at home, my dad walked into my room one day and said, Alena, you got accepted to a medical internship at this little hospital in Moscow. And I was exhilarated. Even though I didn't apply to any internships, I was so excited because I felt that my dad finally accepted me for who I am. And I caught on to something after a couple of days. You see, this hospital never had an internship program. So the thing is, apparently, my dad knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who said that if I spent a couple of months bathing in blood, feces, and unfiltered swearing by the surgeons, I would swear of going into medicine for life. So that's how I was there. And it wasn't illegal per se because I was fresh out of high school. I had no business being in the ER. And since that was the case, I had to be snuck in every single day through the garbage disposal elevator. Didn't smell great, but it felt amazing because I was finally doing what I loved. And most people there were really accommodating, they're really helpful. I would be clueless because I would have never taken anatomy before then. I'd be like, hey, what's that pulsating thing? And they'll be like, oh, that's a heart. You should know that by now. That was fun. But there was this one guy, the chief medical surgeon, the guy at the end of a chain of people of who knew each other. He was the one in charge of scaring me straight. And this man would talk to me a couple of days a week, and he would say things like this. So imagine, I'm walking down the hallway, being productive, carrying some bandage materials or whatever, it doesn't matter. And he'd walk past me and he would recognize that it was me only 5 seconds after he had passed me. And he'd stop, he'd turn around, call out to me, look me in the eyes, and say something along the lines of, hi, Alena, doing good today. When I was just a little bit older than you know, I worked at a burns victims unit. And I can still remember the cries of pain and smell the scent of burning flesh. They haunt me in my dreams. Are you sure you still want to go into medicine? Well, have a good day, kiddo. Bye-bye now. That happens so many times with new stories. My dad's plan backfired spectacularly because, I'm still here, but that almost deterred me from going into medicine. Funnily enough, I'm still here, obviously, still shamelessly flaunting my pre-med track in everyone's faces. But now I have some comfort because I know for a fact that I can handle being covered in blood, being covered in feces, and now I can even swear like a Russian surgeon. Я не знаю, что сказать на сцене, но представьте, что я ругаюсь. Yeah. It feels amazing being back and studying the stuff I saw, so anatomy textbooks feel more personal than ever. But there are a few transitional issues with me coming from Russian educational system to American educational system. For example, back in Russia, when I would write a lab report, I was allowed to be honest. If I did step 1, 2, and 3. I was allowed to write in my lab report that I did step 1, 2, and 3. Here, I apparently can't copy the manual. I have to invent a new lab. I can't rewrite what I did. It's ridiculous. Have you ever had to cheese out a lab report at 3 a.m. the night before? No? Good. I thought I was in a room with overachievers. So what I usually do is I sit there and say something that makes me sound like a medieval vampire. So if the manual says, step 1, light up the Bunsen burner, I say, phase 1, set the burner of the Bunsen category ablaze. That's great. Paperwork, don't like it. I hope I never have to deal with that stuff in med school. I'm a hands-on learner. This is why I love labs. Labs feel like a murder mystery show to me. Partly because you have a script and you have to figure out who's the culprit of the murderer. But since you have the script, you know that it's the butler, but you still have to pretend to be excited and perform in front of the professor so they don't get disappointed. Also, another similarity is that you have to wear a long, unwashed for several months cloak. You have to wear uncomfortable accessories like goggles, gloves, all that stuff. And like a show that's been running for a decade, having the same exact plot repeating over and over again, labs get bored. Have you ever been in a lab watching the bubbles rise in a test tube or a beaker, and you've been so bored to the point that this bubble that's just slightly larger than all the rest is the most exciting thing you've seen all day? It is so exciting to a point where you have to slap your half-asleep partner awake to show them that, hey, see this bubble? It's huge. That's what I do. So yeah, speaking of hands-on learning, as a pre-med major, I have been hearing that if you want to succeed in medicine, you have to start getting ready for your MCATs in 8th grade. I decided to take a bit of an alternative path, so I got a PhD in procrastination. Feel free to refer to me casually as Dr. Yakoba from now on. So in my latest procrastination research, I came across this thing. It's a suture practice kit. I'm not sponsored. But this feels like a really fun way of procrastinating on doing homework. And here's what it has. It has a latex pad with lacerations. And the idea is that I use the instruments and the strings to suture those back together to practice. It's fairly simple. And I love this thing. Have you heard that World War III started a couple of weeks ago? I'm so glad that this thing got delivered to me in time. Because what if I need my non-existent suture skills tonight? Speaking of this kit, you know, I love it. One of my favorite things is this pad. It's really well made, and it feels like skin. So if you stop it, it feels like high-fiving my brothers who are in Moscow, watching TV and horror, as their tyrant of a leader murders innocent civilians in a blind frenzy. You know what else I really like about this kit? I love these strings. They're silky and they're really durable, and they're great. Really easy to manipulate. They remind me of strings attached to Russian media that manipulate people I know and love into thinking that this war is justified and that there was no other way for Russia. You know what my absolutely favorite part is? It is this case with instruments. Like something about the vague shape, the color scheme, reminds me of a coffin. A coffin in which I shall bury all my hopes and dreams of continuing education in this country, since my country decided to sever all connections to sanity. I already don't know how I'm going to be getting a visa for next year, let alone there's a slight possibility that I might get jailed back home for this performance. Regardless, I am so excited that I'm learning so much with this kid because I'm learning how to fix things and I'm learning how to suture. And the more I work with it, the more I realize that it's going to take me and my country a really long time to patch up the gaping hole that this war has left by tearing our hearts out and stripping us of our free wills, all because a delusional maniac of a president forgot to take his meds one time. That's it.
all 4 of you up here now for a question and answer session. Any questions, comments for anybody? Please shout them out.
Can you guys tell us about the process for developing your performances?
I mean, like, we didn't do this really in front of this many people. So it was like a couple of people and all of us. And like when we saw so many people outside today, we were like, oh, this is bad. But like we started with like one story, like all of us had one story, and then we slightly modified it, changed it, faked it a little bit. No. And yeah, so then we had like a couple of stories each. We got more stories, and then we combined them all into one thing.
It was really fun when during some of our first practices we would stand awkwardly in our little quartet and try to get those stories out, because at first you don't realize how funny some of your life experiences are. And it was really eye-opening to see them from other people's perspective and find the humor in our everyday life.
I actually did not get that job. So it was like, I'm like happy that I was at least able to turn it into something different, because I was really depressed for a few weeks. But yeah, it was, so it was just like telling our stories.
Did you guys? Okay. Yeah, so the way I guess I developed the story was initially, so I have ADHD, right? And typically in class, I'm not really paying attention. I'm observing, right? I'm looking at the professors. I'm looking to see if anybody's looking at me while I'm sitting down. Yeah, so that's how it developed. But I didn't think it would be funny with ADHD, so changed it to being California. Yeah.
I have a question. I think one of the hardest things with comedy is maybe timing and sometimes the choice of words and the phrasing. And I guess you have to like try things out like over and over again. Do you find that it gets boring doing that, or is it fun doing that? Because sometimes the process is grinding and sometimes it energizes you. What's your experience of that?
It's cringy.
Yeah, that's like,
Also really depends on an audience. When we performed in front of each other for the past couple of days before the performance, that was the worst experience ever.
Like when we did it in front of like random people, it would be exciting when people would laugh. but when they didn't, we would laugh.
I don't really have much to add, but yeah, the more we do it, or like the more I did it, I was cringing at my story and felt that I was trying too hard or whatever. But yeah, what Ishaan says is true. When nobody's laughing, you kind of walk really sadly off the stage. It's really sad, but yeah, you guys were great. Thank you.
I don't need the microphone, but I was wondering, especially besides the actually credit aspect, would you do this again?
Yeah, definitely.
The question for the Zoom audience is, would you do this again? The Zoom audience can only hear if you use the mic.
Oh. I have no idea. I don't think so. I don't know.
I would definitely do it again. It was fun. You have to say something.
I will take it
yes,
as no.
yes, I would do it again.
Do you need the mic?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Who's up there?
So at the beginning, Professor Armstrong said you guys were preparing these acts for like comedy clubs or bars. Is that correct? Yeah, like or events.
It started out as preparing for this event with the possibility of continuing down the road somewhere else in case this goes well. think it went okay-ish. We'll see.
How would you feel about doing this at like a comedy club?
Are you inviting us?
I don't have any connections, but
Free drinks.
So I'll answer that. Well, I don't know how they feel about it. I know how two of them feel about it, but I'll keep those two anonymous. I used to do this at comedy clubs. So anybody willing and interested, we can make this work out. Anybody who wants to answer his question?
Yes, we would. Yeah, we would do it if we
I think
had
we're
the
at
opportunity.
this point they might be all undecided.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm super awkward right now.
It's really nerve-wracking. I don't know if I would, I mean, I did it today, so maybe, but it is really nerve-wracking. It was, I couldn't sleep last night. But maybe one day if we had like different content.
Yeah. I think I feel the same in regards to maybe someday. It's hard to find an audience that would resonate with our stories because it's mostly college-based, and in a bar the crowd might be a little too mixed, and I'm not sure how non-professors and non-college kids would react to our stories.
Yeah, actually, I think it would depend on
your
you.
piece is the only one that would work.
If you think we're actually ready. So I don't know. We can't really say. It's really more on you. I don't think so.
I would definitely do it. Drunk people are easier to make them down.
You're a freshman. How do you know that?
No, I wasn't drunk. People were drunk.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, let's thank everybody. And that ends the morning session, so stick around for our keynote speaker, Ms. Jackie Mason, who will tell us about my journey from New York Tech to Wall Street and lessons learned along the way. And lunch.
There's a source photo in here at 11:50.
Thank you.
So come back for the photo also. And there's lunch outside maybe.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming.